in the massive nature of the problems that the church is showing right now. And recently on NPR I heard a discussion about the relative comparative between the other churches in the same kind of situation. And it was stated that in many of the churches there's an elders group, and if a priest or a clergy comes forward and he has these kinds of problems with these priests,
I heard that.
he's fired. But then again, some of the other denominations have protected them. The Mormons have had a huge problem that way.
The Episcopalians, an Episcopalian priest wrote a letter, and she said the Episcopal women, priests and women in leadership in their communities early on forced this issue to be dealt with. So, you know, often I'm asked, what difference would women make? Well, in the Episcopal Church, they made a heck of a lot of difference because they caused the problem to be confronted and to be dealt with in a transparent way. So I think if women had been around the table in leadership positions in the Roman Catholic Church, they would not have gotten away with hiding this kind of stuff. And they would have had to turn it over to, first of all, to the civil authorities to investigate. Just how long it's taken the Vatican to get to even admit that their policy now should be turning it over to the civil authorities. Although they said there was nothing that would prevent you from doing that. But, you know, obviously people did not turn it over, and that's why we're in the situation we're in today.
Well, speaking of women, which I didn't mention in my earlier thing, I did a 3-year set of courses called The Art of Politics up in Parish at the retirement home up there, or not retirement center, or excuse me, retreat center. And its Episcopal Church runs it. And it was about political cartoons, because I've done a lot of that in illustration work and so forth. And I was citing different circumstances that would be controversial. That if you did a cartoon about it, what would that do to the audience that was out there? And I used the issue of, was the resurrection really a sham? And if someone were to illustrate that, what would happen? And the discussion came around it. It's 65 people, many of them from California, who repeatedly come back to watch that. We're in the last minute here, but I'll make it quick.
Okay.
And so I didn't realize they had a little reporter in there. The next class that I, the bishop, female bishop, was there, and that was the last series of courses I taught there. And just cut it right out. We're going to go to a break shortly here, and we'll come back and do a little bit more.
Okay.
We're back. The issue of gender was demonstrated to necessarily not change things.
Right.
So how do you avoid repeating the same kind of hierarchical behavior that went on before that people got so fed up with?
Right. You have to start with the concept of a discipleship of equals, a community of equals, that everyone in the whole community are gifted and everyone's called to come together to share their gifts. And therefore the leadership circle within that community can be elected too as it develops. And people make decisions together by discernment, instead of one person making the decisions. What my Episcopal women priests have told me, friends, that yes, they were ordained 30 years ahead of us, but they didn't change the system. They were ordained into a hierarchical system, and that's the problem. So I think the Roman Catholic women priest model is to change, not to buy into the hierarchy, but instead to really start to restructure the model to be a new paradigm.
Somebody has to decide to do that. I
mean, community decision-making can be in a consensus.
When you do that, then it's a design that you're creating. Decision-making is it by vote among 20 people or 50 people?
It can be done different ways. It can be prayerful discernment. There's a process of discernment.
Or the representative government, so to speak?
Well, or you ask for feedback on something. People say, hey, I'm comfortable with this.
Sounds good to me.
That's what we're doing.
How it works. I don't think we've had a vote on any of
Well, there's an old saying, if everybody's responsible, ain't nobody responsible. How do you do that?
I think it's very important for the whole community to take responsibility and call the leadership to accountability. I think that's the kind of thing we're setting up.
I would say I have seen that it can be, it's a lot easier if you have one person appointed to take care of a job, and they're the ones who are accountable. You can probably get it done. I've seen that sometimes in our liturgical planning right before our Saturday liturgy, there are 3 or 4 people who are all trying to make sure that we have. Did you get the readers? Did you? And who's doing the offertory? So people are sort of falling over themselves to make sure that some things get done. And you're right, we're not used to doing it that way, but to me, that's a small price to pay, that little bit of chaos and overlap and everybody checking on each other. It's a small price to pay to avoid this top-down.
Well, I think the one
approach.
problem I see here, I think that's noble, and I would submit that the reason the Treaty of Nicaea took place was to get rid of this kind of everybody has an opinion.
Right, the local churches were the ones who controlled things, and they were more familial, you know, more partnership oriented, and then it became, you know, bought into the empire, and then it became hierarchical. And well, look at the consequences we're dealing with right now. So I think,
well, people would say, though,
time.
this is 2,000 years later, or whatever, 1,400 years,
Right. depending
on the time you're looking at. I think that the problem you've got is that when somebody says, well, who's the spokesman for this church you're in? Who's going to say what and up and who's going to make the decisions? And are you going to just say, well, I got to go back and get an opinion from the congregation?
Yes. Well, in our Roman Catholic priest movement, we have discerned who's going to do different roles. But if there's a decision to be made, there's a leadership circle elected. The bishops are not part of the leadership circle. They will never be. Structurally, we have separated the leadership circle from the bishops. So immediately,
so you have
we
a laity deciding everything?
Well, we have right now, we have priests, because we have not, our communities, some are house churches, some are growing. The model is still being, you know, born. It's still coming to birth in different places.
How do you avoid the charge that says, organized religion, you know? Is it going to be disorganized? I mean, I'm just being the advocate here, the devil's advocate. If it's disorganized, then who's going to pay attention to it? I'm just giving you the argument that people are going to make. Why bother?
I would ask the people who've come to the Saturday liturgies about what they experience when they come, because they see what happens, and they
you do have a dialogue homily that you do, which is pass the mic around and everybody gets to. Some people get more of their time than others.
Yeah, that's true.
But you know what? The whole thing is, our model is the Spirit of God is in the people of God. The church says that the people of God are the church. We actually are trying to live that model instead of one person giving their homily and only their ideas, and in the institutional church it's male only. You don't get the richness and the diversity and the beauty of the different journeys, the different faith journeys. So a shared homily, and then we invite people to come around the altar so that we share the Eucharistic.
Participation.
We have everyone participating in the Eucharistic prayer and praying together.
In Byzantium, that's how it was. The altars were built in the fields, and the people went around the altars.
See,
so that we're returning to our ancient tradition.
That's a return to
in our
Vatican
Catholic parishes, we all usually refer to the priest as the celebrant. We use the term presider. That's the priest who leading the prayers and holding the microphone first and so on. So that there is a leader of the service, but we call everyone celebrants. We don't say that the priest is a
celibate.
Celebrants. Celebrants. And people experience that.
Don't you? I mean, do you think really? You know, with your story about what happened in Epiphany Church and the washing of the feet, and my experience recently with a big family argument about this very thing, the terror among and a need that people have They like the ritual. They like the habit. They're conditioned. It's bonding through conditioning is really what it is.
Yes, and that's why I think we use the Eucharistic liturgies that are very familiar to people. We have the same
long flowing robes.
We have this. Actually, I had the people vote on whether I wore the vestments or not initially in our house church, and they voted that I would. So therefore, it was the people's choice. But we do follow the Roman Catholic rituals and Eucharistic prayers, but we alter the language in that it's always inclusive. Well, as you've heard when you've come, God our Creator, God our Mother and Father, it's balanced. For too long, women have been kept out.
In the last 2 minutes.
Kept out, and they feel excluded because the language is exclusionary.
I know you're excited about what's going on right now.
Yes.
But this excitement is watching the church, the official church of the past, burn down in front of everyone or fall apart.
That's not the excitement.
Well, no, but there is a consequence to when something's going away and something's coming forward at the same time. It's sort of a birth situation. Right. But we're down to the last minute. Michael, do you have any final thoughts about the problem and the solution?
There was something I was going to say about the liturgy, but I'm in reference to what we were just talking about, but it escapes my mind. Must be having a little stage fright all of a sudden.
Yeah. Well, we're going to probably have to have a conversation again or two on this whole thing.
Sure.
Probably have a discussion about, is Jesus who you think he is, or is he something
I'd like to
really
just
else?
answer that question and say we're a bridge. I see us as a bridge between the hierarchical church and the discipleship of equals, and we're trying to help people cross the chasm right now without falling off the bridge.
I saw Godspell last night, so that was an entertainment.
That's good.
So we're coming to the very end, and I want to thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Augie.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And adios, amigos. This is